In every arc of Bluelock that requires surviving to qualify to the next round, there have been surprises for each of them. Nico, who seemed like he was eliminated after the first selection, somehow made a turnaround in the last two games where he scored 4 goals. In the second selection, it was Ryusei Shido who was part of the 7th team to survive and sent Kunigami to hell, who then came back as a surprise at the end of the U20 game. And now for the NEL, I'm predicting the surprise survivor will be Hajime Nishioka.
Hey, you lukewarm egoists. Subscribe to Suki. Or don't. Be a joke of a striker all your life if you want. Or be a strong egoist by subscribing right now. Your choice.
Today we will be exploring Hajime Nishioka and the hints that we have that could make this delusional fan service dream of Nishioka surviving a bit more realistic. Before I begin, I do want to advise that most of this will be speculation off of the little material we do actually have of him. First selection. In the very first chapter of Bluelock, he is introduced as Aomori's Messi. People mainly took notice of his comparison to Messi, one of the best footballers to ever touch the earth. However, you should also take into account Aomori itself, as the manga was published in 2018, at a similar time to when Aomori was so dominant in real life to the point where they actually won the 2018 Nationals. So to be regarded as a Messi regen from Japan's best high school in the nation is a bigger statement than most may realize. For the high school he played in, we don't know which one, but I have a speculation as to what it is, and I think it has already been revealed to us, but we just haven't realized it yet, if it is true. Keep this in the back of your head as I will get back into this later. That's all we have on Nishioka for the first selection, so let's get to the next one, shall we? Second selection. He was a survivor for the 5th selection team, and he teamed up with Barou and Naohaya, and thanks to a fellow YouTuber Akira and his video about the second selection, it's safe to say Barou and Nishioka might have known each other prior to Bluelock, as they are both based in the same prefecture of Aomori, with Barou being in Akudo, Aomori. We also know that Barou dominated the 3v3 match, scoring all the team's 4 goals, so I have 2 theories on what the team is. The first one is the logical one, and the second one is the Nagi-Reo one. The first approach I have is that Hiyori and Ishikari teamed up with Yukimiya to take down Barou. It's safe to say that these 3 won and picked Nishioka, and given the Karasu and Hiyori story, we know it would have been a fitting end for Karasu to clear the second selection by beating his junior. Then they would have picked Yukimiya as their 5th man. This would have forced Nishioka, Hiyori, and Ishikari back to the 3v3 stage, where they would get Saramadara in a 3v3 match and then get Nico in a hard 4v4 matchup. Now that sounds logical and all, except for one tiny problem. That would make Barou too OP, as scoring 4 goals while Nishioka and Naohaya were useless against Yukimiya, Hiyori, and Ishikari is just pure madness. In episode Nagi, if you look at the characters in the FC Barcha and Munchen City teams, a lot of them have been given a lot of screen time, especially in episode Nagi, primarily Himizu and Hiragi. So my theory is that Yukimiya teamed up with 2 randoms who placed high, maybe Haiji and Sakura, and then they picked up Nishioka after they beat Barou's team, and then they went and lost to Karasu's team, losing Yukimiya to them. This would send them down to the 3v3, where we would see them face Whale, Shido, and Igaguri. And since episode Nagi has finished, Nagi's second selection, they may do Whales as well, which could be our first time seeing Nishioka in action, as we won't see much of that in Munchen City versus FC Barcha until we get that in episode Nagi as well. This would mean we would get into the etymology of his name, which I'll go over later, so keep this second point in the back of your head as well. Nishioka got injured thanks to a contusion, which is basically like a bone bruise. It could take days to heal for a simple one, a couple of weeks for a mild one, and severe damaged ones could take a full month or even more to heal from. Remember the club I told you to keep in the back of your head? I believe it's Aomori Da. Yes, they were even respected by Anri, so I believe they were a top tier school, and were even stated to be a fixture at nationals, keeping up with real life events. My theory is that Nishioka was their king but suffered a severe contusion before the match against Nagi and Reo, which left him out of action for months. Since contusions cause swelling and pain and can limit joint range of motion near the injury, torn blood vessels may cause bluish discoloration. The injured muscle may feel weak and stiff. Sometimes a pool of blood collects within damaged tissue, forming a lump over the injury, hematoma. This could be a similar situation to Chiguri, where he recovers from an injury but has the trauma of the injury and loses motivation to play football in a sense, because he could tear his ACL again, but for Nishioka, it could be a repetitive contusion. I believe Nishioka has been restricting himself similar to Chiguri in the first selection, and especially after having it happen to him again in the World 5 match, his biggest match to date yet, that may have dwindled his motivation. He did play in the third selection with Bachira and Haiji, making me believe that Bachira did so well with Rin and Shido, especially destroying Team B 5-2, that Nishioka barely got to do anything, and he might have held himself back too to let others shine. This is a trait of Lionel Messi, being humble and nice always, putting others above himself. A prime example is when Zlatan was having a bad game and kept on missing shots he should have converted into goals, but Messi still gave his penalty to Zlatan so he could score and get his confidence up. So this would make sense of Nishioka being like Messi not only in skill but in character as well, around his height as well too. This would have been the second time Nishioka may have let someone else shine instead of him, as he might have done it with Barou in the second selection and may have done the same thing with Rin, Shido and Bachira here. It could also be the fact that he just came off of an injury too, as there was not a lot of time between those two events. I'm not saying that he's better than Rin, Shido and Bachira or Bao. I'm just saying he might have held himself back because of how OP those guys were already. This is why he didn't make the reserves for the U20 team, because he didn't try in the third selection, or he couldn't even try his best because of the injury. Now, before I get into my NEL theory for him, there is one last subject we have to go over, which is his information outside of the manga. He has received custom drawings from Nomura, and they always do this with important characters, so that's a good sign for him. He also shares the same birthday as Isagi's dad, Issei, being May 1st. This may mean he may have something to do with Isagi in the future. And his dad's birthday was reviewed in the second volume of the Egoist Bible, so it still shows that he has Nishioka in his mind. Now remember the second thing I told you to think about, his etymology. Now we are getting back into it. His first name, Hajime, means beginning. This can refer to how we see him in the first chapter of Bluelock, how his birthday is on the first of the month, and how he started off on the top prefecture in Japan. For the second selection, he starts off strong, heading to the 4v4 immediately, and then falling down to the Nishioka point, if we use the Nagi Rail scenario I mentioned earlier. Nishioka means West Hill. West Hill often carries a cultural meaning associated with an elevated viewpoint, signifying a place of perspective, reflection, and sometimes even spiritual connection, often drawing inspiration from the idea of looking westward towards the setting sun, symbolizing the end of the day or a cycle, and potentially a new beginning. This could show before his 2v2, as he had a new light of fire embedded into him that carried him through the second selection before having it crushed to the World 5. The last trivia fact that he is placed with is the fact that he placed 29th in the first Bluelock popularity poll with 3 votes. This is interesting as he placed 29th in the 100 gold challenge in the second selection. And for the 3 votes, keep that as the third thing that is going to be in the back of your head today. Nishioka during his time in Munchen City didn't play in the first 2 matches but played against Uber and got a bid of 3 million yen and is last place in the bid rankings right now. Now we have to go over character interactions since we went with the Nagi Rail situation. I believe Nishioka would have great respect for Rail for beating him in the second selection and would want to align himself with them. We could get a heartfelt backstory conversation between Nishioka and Nagi, like how he does with Chiguri and Zantetsu throughout the episode Nagi manga and the main Bluelock manga itself for Chiguri's case. Here we can see Nishioka explain his injury to Nagi, and then Nagi would say he is kind of like Chiguri, and that would lead Nagi to introduce Nishioka to Chiguri properly and say that they have the same thing in common, similar to how Nagi did that with Ryo and Zantetsu, leading to Nishioka and Chiguri having a shared comparison of bonds of injuries, and Chiguri can give him advice on how to motivate himself, even with the fact that he could risk injury again, and how he enjoys football, making Nishioka enjoy football more like he did in the good old days. That connection between Chiguri and Nishioka can really spark something out of Nishioka. I believe this would have happened 15 days before the Barcher match, just like how we got Nanase with Rin around the same time. However, Nishioka getting this low of a bid doesn't mean he sucks, because they were against Ubers, the strongest defensive team in the NEL. Even Chiguri only got a 5 million bid increase, so I'm sure Nishioka getting a 3 million bid doesn't mean he is a bad player at all. I also think this was a nod to him getting 3 votes in the Bluelock popularity poll. Now this finally leads to FC Barca, a team that boasts in creativity. This is the best place for Nagi and Nishioka to thrive in, as seeing this creative spark wouldn't only encourage FC Barca but the opposing team, Munchen City, as I think FC Barca would bring out the creative side of Nagi and Nishioka. And since they are the weakest, and with Nagi and Reo having a comeback, I could see Munchen City finally at top form. This could lead to Nishioka also getting a bid increase due to the high level of performance he can distribute against this weak team. If he links up with Chigri assisting his goal and does more link-up plays, that should help him survive. Please keep in mind that there's a lot of speculation on Kiora surviving, and he didn't even have a bid entry in his match. So with Nishioka already having a bid heading into this match with plenty of eyes on it due to it being the final match, and with more and more subscribers with each match on Bluelock TV, Nishioka would definitely bow out. And if he assists Chigri early on in the game, that would be good for him, as the match started before BM versus PXG's match. So it means most of the eyes would have been on the Munchen match earlier on rather than later on in the game, as BM versus PXG would have stolen the attention for sure. I believe Nishioka's final bid will be 29 million yen to pay homage to his ranking in the second selection 100 goal challenge, and would put him right above the 23rd spot, as I believe he would place 22nd, right above Fukaku Gen, who I believe will place 23rd. There is one last theory I have about this, and it's a callback to chapter 248 where Buratsuta wants to explain his plan to Ray Dark about the U20 World Cup. Keep in mind in chapter 210, Buratsuta threatens ego with the promise he made, stating soccer is just a business. I think one of Buratsuta's plans is to increase the slot of players from 23 players qualifying to 26, just like in real life, where we could have 3 more Blue Lockers enter, which would give Nishioka a better chance of surviving. I know the story has been adamant on 23 players, but we have seen Buratsuta pull the superiority card over ego by taking Shido from his team, so it can be done. So there you have it. Here was my full Nishioka character explanation and theory on how he could survive the NEL. Let me know what your thought of it is on, and until the next video, stay blessed, Suki out.